Alright, so we've now got our basic information about the theme, but it's not actually doing anything quite yet at this moment. So what we're going to do is use our index.php. Now, this is actually going to be what we call a template file. And what that means is that it's sort of the shell to which all the content will be filled into. So when you're inside of WordPress and you make a web page, or you make the pages inside the Gutenberg editor or Elementor, or later on it's going to be Divi for us, however you're making your content, you make it inside of there, but that content goes inside of a template. Okay, so you can kind of look at this like making a bootstrap, almost like framework, and then all of the, you put in your own content into that framework. It's the same basic idea. Now the index, there's a lot of different kind of template files that we can make. You can make ones like for pages, so most of your websites can be pages. You can make one for posts, for your blog posts. You can make ones for the homepage specifically. You can make ones for archive. You can make ones for, if you go to a site and the site's missing, the 404 search. They have all sorts of, and you'll see there's a whole bunch of them. But if you don't have all those, and we're not making all those because that'd be a lot of work, all of them come back to index. Index will be the fallback, most basic template file. All right, so that's why we're going to work on this one first, and then later on, if we feel like adding more, we can add more for specific different types of post types. But we're just going to do index.php, and that's what we're going to start with. All right. So first thing I want to do is just try to write, just so you can see how this works. We're just going to go ahead and write a little HTML in here. So I'm just going to go a couple down, and we'll just do like H2, and I'll just say, look, PHP can contain HTML code. Then then we'll just go like this and do H2, and then I'll just do some P and say, isn't that really cool? No, it is not. Okay. Oops. Okay. So just go ahead and save that. Just want to show you something. So we're going to save that. Then what I want you to do is go to your web page. Okay. So you probably put it over here. Shwink. So go to your web page. Go to your themes. Okay. And then just go ahead and under themes, just click activate. Okay. So you should already have this window probably open. Hit activate so that now that will become your active theme. Yay. Okay. Now that we have this theme activated, we can actually preview what we have. So I'm going to go to my pages, and we'll just go to home, and I'm just going to hit view. So what you'll see, it says, look, PHP can contain HTML code. Isn't that cool? So more often than not, you're actually going to see that PHP has HTML built into it. Because in the end, what you're actually doing is using PHP to write HTML code. Because the browser reads HTML. That's what it's actually reading. What's happening is the server where you're storing your computer, where you're storing your site on some computer off somewhere in the internet where there's a big server farm of just a bunch of computers that are processing these. That is reading the PHP and then outputting HTML to the user. So what they're actually getting is this, not the PHP. So you can actually write HTML right inside of PHP. In fact, you have to for most of the things, okay? So there you go, right? So literally you could just write a whole pages such as it were. Yay, isn't that exciting? I can tell you're excited. I'm excited too. Okay. So let's actually write a little bit of PHP here so that you can see it actually working. So let's say before this, I want to just do like we did with the JavaScript. I want to just be able to have it have, say, like, hello and good morning, good afternoon, good night. All right. So the way that PHP works is that it's kind of like HTML, where, with HTML, we have to do HTML. You tell where the HTML starts, and then you go like this, where the HTML ends, right? So you do a start and a beginning. We do kind of the same thing, although we don't have to do it in PHP, oddly enough. You want to do the same thing. You have an opening tag, so it's this, PHP, and then the closing tag is this, like that. So while it's in that mode, watch when I take this off. See how this looks all weird now? It's because it's trying to read this as PHP. But when I do the closing, now it looks normal again because it's not trying to read it as PHP. Everything inside of this tag will be read as PHP. So it's the same thing again when we write JavaScript, right? And you write script like this, right? And then everything inside of this gets read as JavaScript. Same basic concept, okay? But you're going to see that unlike JavaScript, where you kind of either put it at the beginning or the end of the document, PHP will kind of exist all the way through it, all right? We're not going to do that right now, but just be aware that we will eventually. Okay, so that's the starting tag, that's the ending tag. Now what we're going to do is just go ahead and start making code, okay? So we're going to do date. So what the goal here is to have it say good morning, good afternoon, or good night, depending on the hour of the day, all right? That's what we're going to do. So it's going to be pretty much the same as the JavaScript. We're just going to write in PHP. That way it's a little semi-comfortable and semi-familiar with you, all right? So let's go ahead and we will do date underscore default time zone dot underscore set. And then what we want to set it to is going to be quotes the America slash new underscore York. Okay, because that's what we're doing. And then you just put a semicolon on the end of it. So like other programming languages, like most other programming languages, not all of them do it, like Python doesn't, you're going to end with a semicolon for each line of code, just like we did in JavaScript. This is a built-in function inside of WordPress, and basically you're going to notice that most of the functions, we're going to use a lot of them in here, most of the built-in functions, they don't start with a capital letter like you typically see. They also don't use camel case, meaning they don't capitalize every word. They put underscores in between each word in the function, okay? But it does use arguments, so you can see we actually have a parentheses, and then we are sending it this information. So we want to set the time zone for our site, and then what we're going to do is we want to set it to the American slash New York, okay? That's what that part's doing. So we're running a pre-built function inside of that, all right? Now what we're going to do is we're going to declare a variable, money. So variables, we'll start with money, and then my variable name, I'm just going to call it current time, and we're going to make it equal to date, quotes, and we're just going to do H. Like that. All right. So again, you're probably looking at this and is a little bit confused. So right off the bat, variable names, all variable names start with a money symbol, kind of like jQuery does as well. So if you see the money symbol, right, that means that it's a variable. And I just made this variable name because current time made sense because I want to find what the current time is. And then again, there's a pre-built function just called the date. And then to the date, I ask for the hour. So I'll show you where I got that from. I got it from w3schools.com. If you actually look in the bottom right, at the very bottom, I'll say, oh, you might be confused by this. It's a really nice resource, but basically you've probably have used it before when looking up information about JavaScript or HTML or CSS. But basically it's a website just dedicated to information about web technologies and code and what have you, right? So if you go there and you go to the PHP section, you'll see that it has information, and you can actually go through this if you want, and it will kind of explain PHP. If you want more information on it and to learn more about it, this will kind of help guide you through. But it's also just a resource of various functions and such. So I knew I wanted to do like the greeting thing, but I knew it wouldn't be written exactly the same as the Flash. So I just went down to advanced. I found a date and time. I clicked on that. Give it a second. And you can see there's a bunch of other information in here as well. So right here, it'll say date, and then it's the format and timestamp. So right here, it says, here are some characters commonly used for dates. Oh, I didn't do date, actually. I did, I wanted time, so here we go. So if you do H, it gives you hours. A lowercase h gives me 12-hour format. I is minutes. S is seconds. Blah, blah, blah. So if you wanted the hour, minutes, seconds, I don't know what that is. Oh, AM and PM. You could do this, right? But I just decided I just wanted the hour because I'm just going to do it based on military time so that I can tell what time of day it is. It's actually easier than trying to use these other ones. But that's all. That's where I got it from. So that's you can literally find most of the information and things in here. There's obviously quite a bit. I'm not expecting you to don't go through it. I'm not looking. I just want you to know that like I don't just like being able to pull it right out of whatever. I have to look things up too. So when you're going to do stuff and you're trying to figure something out, the best way to do is just look up and see if you can find. People post all sorts of information online. Usually I just Google stuff and be like, oh, how do I find time inside of PHP? And then someone will have some bit of code, and I'll just take that and retrofit it. All right. I just want you to be able to somewhat understand what you're reading, and then be able to adjust it for your own needs, which is literally what I did here. Right. Okay. So I had to also do this. I had to set this time here because I noticed when I originally ran this bit of code, I'm not sure, but I think it goes by just a general time. And I needed to set the time to like this area, East Coast here, so that this would be correct. Otherwise, it was showing up as not right. And I didn't realize that till after I ran it. And I was like, oh, that's not right. So then I looked it up and I found that you have to set the time code. So that's why we did this part first. But again, I didn't know to do that. It didn't work, and then I figured that out. All right. Okay. Next. So we did that. Now what we're going to do is we are going to set for different times. So it's if then else statements. You probably are super familiar with these. So we're just going to do if, and then whatever is inside these quotes is true, right? It's going to run what's in this bracket. And then all we're going to do is say else if, right? Whatever's inside these brackets is true. It's going to run what's in here, and so on and so forth. We'll do another else if. Oops, sorry, that was just else. Else if what's inside these brackets is true. And then if none of those are true, we're just going to rely on else, which we don't have to give any information to because this just happens if none of these other things are true. This is the fallback. This is the last thing. If none of it's true, this one will be run. Okay? All right, so first thing we're going to test is we're going to say if our current time, right, if that is greater than 18, I want to write good morning, okay? I'm sorry, good evening. So what we're going to do is this. We're actually going to make a variable that's going to hold the greeting, and then we'll write it afterwards. Okay, so we're going to make a variable called greeting. So, boom, greeting. Greeting text. Let's make it simpler. Greeting text. And we'll give it the value. We'll do an assignment, and we're just going to give it the value of good evening with an 8, apparently. I'm good at typing. Good evening, boom, and semicolon. Okay? Like that. So basically we're going to make a variable called greeting, and we're going to assign it a value of this text. Now one thing I do want you to notice is, notice when I did this variable, I gave it a number. And in this variable, we gave it a string. But notice that you do not have to explicitly declare that this is of type variable. So in some other languages, you have to say like, you have to give it a keyword saying var or float or int or something like that, and then you put what in there. With this one, it's actually much more open where you can just write the basic code, and then you just write the variable name, and it will know it's a variable because that's the money symbol, and then it will accept whatever you put in there. Okay, this is one of the advantages of doing object-oriented programming. Usually they're a little bit more lenient on it. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing again. So we're going to say if money current time is greater than 12 hours, we're going to have the greeting, money greeting text. We'll make that one equal to good afternoon with an exclamation point. Boop. Okay, makes sense. Then you can probably guess what this one's going to be. So if the current time is greater than 0, then we're going to go ahead and we want the greeting text. Greeting text, we want it to be equal to good morning. But we're not going to do an exclamation point because it's morning. But I'll say good morning. And then else tab, the greeting, we'll just make it, because we want to have something in case none of those happen. Greeting text, we'll just set it equal to welcome. Oops. Welcome. Like that. All right. So those are our options here. So we're going to set the time. Then we're going to find the hour of time, within it, which is going to be 24 hours. And then we're going to test that number. And if it's one of these, then it'll go down here. All right. Now, we have our greeting text. So now the last thing we need to do is actually print the reading text. All right. So to do that, it's going to be echo, which is a function that we can call. And then we're going to echo an H1. Oops. Because I want this to, you got to remember, I'm trying to print out my stuff. So I'm actually going to, I could just echo out the text, but then it's just going to be basic text with no HTML tags on it. It's better to put the tags on it because that way they'll be formatted correctly. So we'll do H1, and then we want to put the greeting text, space, money. Oops, that's not money. Money, greeting text, space, period, space. And then we need to do the closing tag, H1, like that. And then we're going to do the semicolon. And let's just, yeah, like that. Okay? So, hopefully that makes sense. Then you save it. One thing I also want to make a point about, because you might be confused by this, I find it confusing as well. So you'll notice that when I was calling these functions, right, so like I called this function, notice how it has these, it has the arguments, right, and then you send it some arguments, you know, and this one has the parentheses, just like you would normally see. But then when we look at this function, see how it doesn't have parentheses? You can put parentheses. I could do this. If this makes you feel better, you can do that. It will work. However, most of the time when you see echo, they don't put that in there. For whatever reason. It's very strange. PHP is what they call a loosely written language. And basically what that means is that it does not care. So if I name something with certain caps and not caps another thing, it does not care whether it has caps or not. It disregards it. Some of the stuff that you'll see written will be written a certain way here. So like this echo, I didn't put the parentheses, but I could on another sheet use parentheses if I want to. It's a little bit more like loose, I guess, which I personally am not a fan of because I feel like it lets things be a little bit weird. But you're going to see like here, see how we did these if-else statements? You're going to see in the next slide? Yeah, the next slide, we're going to do an if-else statement, but we're not going to do it like this. It's not going to have the parentheses. They do it differently in that one. So just be aware that it varies a little bit, but there is a logic behind it. It's just that's how it works. So anyways, save this, Control S, and then go to your, right here, go to your page, and you should just be able to refresh it. And then you'll see it says, good afternoon, and that's because it's 3:25. Okay? So, there you go. All right? And so now we've made some basic, you'll see we've written some basic PHP, and it's pretty similar to JavaScript. Hopefully you kind of see the syntax is slightly different. It's a little bit, like I said, loose. But, you know, it's there, right? And you can write HTML, so hopefully you feel a little bit okay with it. And the next one we're going to do is actually make our finalized thing, because this isn't actually going to work, because you'll notice that it doesn't show up our actual content.